In Illinois, the minimum amount of liability coverage that you need to operate a motor vehicle as a private person is governed by the statutes in Illinois. And currently, those limitations are that a person has to have $25,000 of liability coverage per person with a maximum of $50,000 per occurrence. If a driver injures you and they injure you in an amount over the minimum of insurance coverage, there is a type of coverage that you can elect to have called underinsured coverage. Underinsured motorist coverage is a type of coverage that when you are purchasing your insurance, you want to be aware of. And in purchasing the insurance, you can basically buy insurance that protects you up to an amount that you would choose in the event that the driver of the vehicle that would possibly injure you would have less coverage. To obtain underinsured motorist coverage, you really need to talk with your insurance provider, your insurance company, your insurance agent, and generally it is coverage that is provided on most policies. However, there are certain exceptions where it can be excluded, and when you talk with your insurer, you want them to explain that coverage, because if you are involved in a serious accident, it can be very important to protect you and your family. Uninsured motorist coverage is a different type of coverage than underinsured coverage. Uninsured coverage is coverage that you purchase to protect you in the event that the driver of another vehicle that might injure you in a collision has no coverage whatsoever. Uninsured motorist would be the type of driver that is on the roads and is in violation of the law and does not have any insurance coverage whatsoever. It can also mean someone who had coverage, but for some reason under the policy no longer applies and they're not insured. And that coverage can protect a driver for the occurrence where someone else would not have insurance. In checking what type of insurance coverages that you have, there are a number of ways that you can check. And it's really important to actually see it in paper or on your insurance agreement so you know. One of the ways is that when you receive your billing or your payments, there's something called a declarations page with that insurance that should specify exactly by category what the various types of coverage are. Like many people, if you don't save those documents or don't have them, a simple phone call or email to your insurance agent or insurance company, they can provide that to you very easily. To determine what your limits are would basically be the same thing. You would want to go check with your documents, look at your insurance contract to see what your coverages are, but alternatively, if you haven't hung on to those documents or didn't save them, simply contacting your insurance agent or company will result in you getting that information. In the event that you believe you have a claim for uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, the manner in which you make that claim and how that claim is pursued under the law is really dependent upon the terms of the insurance contract. So if you believe you have one of those claims, it's important to get a copy of your insurance policy and read how that's done. If the requirements aren't followed, there's the possibility that it could affect your ability to be covered under that. I would recommend that you contact an attorney anytime you feel like you have one of those claims to fully assess it. In general, there are time limits to make an underinsured or uninsured motorist claim with your insurance company. Like many parts of insurance law, really those time frames are dependent oftentimes on the language of the contract. So you really should look at the contract to determine what those time limits are, but it can be complicated, and when you're talking about important issues like that, consulting an attorney is a very good idea. Where an uninsured or underinsured claim or case would be heard, again, is dependent upon the terms of the policy. Oftentimes, there is a provision in insurance policies where those claims are handled outside of the court system in what's called an arbitration. That's not necessarily 100% of the time, and again, it's very important to look at your policy to make sure that you understand how those claims are handled and that they're properly made. The manner in which claims for underinsured or uninsured coverage are handled, whether it's through the court system or outside of the court system in what we call an arbitration proceeding, is governed by the terms of the policy language. So it's important to obtain a copy of the policy that was in effect for your insurance at the time and look at that policy closely to determine where that claim would be heard and how it would be properly made. When someone's injured in an automobile collision, it's very important to know several aspects of the insurance that are covered. As we've talked about today, there's the aspect of the other driver's insurance coverage, which is important to know, to determine whether or not that coverage is sufficient to compensate the injured person for their damages. The other important part of insurance in a motor vehicle collision is to know what your own insurance policy limits are. As we've talked about today, those policy limits can assist you in making an underinsured or uninsured claim if the other driver doesn't have sufficient coverage. But really, going to the language of the policy is a big part of making these determinations to ensure that your rights as an injured person are protected. Anytime that you're hurt and you believe you have personal injury claims, whether they're direct negligence or the possibility of an uninsured, underinsured claim, because these analyses can be very fact-specific, it's always a wise idea to at least consult with an attorney to get information before proceeding or making any determination that may harm you.